Chapter 10. The Monster Within. We ate sausage, bacon, egg and cheese biscuits in the morning, also steaming hot direct from my ring. As we were gathering up camp, we all suddenly felt an intense pressure bearing down upon us. Looking up, we saw some 100 feet in the air a figure standing on the air. I got a pretty good look at him using enhanced olfactory in combination with partial transformation up to 20%. He was, I would say, around 9 feet tall by my best eyeball and had white skin with a single horn on his head that started on the right side and wrapped around the front of his skull to the left side before rising into the air and curving forward. The figure had 4 eyes with what looked like Egyptian black mascara patterns. The bottom center of each eye, the black markings also streaked down like paint oozing down a wall, but the rest of the features looked normal. He wore a long green cloak over well-adorned black armor. In an instant, Dave was standing before us with an axe in hand. His yellow aura shone brightly, and I knew immediately this was serious. I tried using Appraiser's Oculus but got a failed notification instead. This was bad and my body trembled slightly. I've been in many dangerous combat situations, yet between my training and my irregular modifications I was used to being the most dangerous being in any scenario. The similar feeling to the sensation I felt when seeing the Monster King made clear to me that we might be in trouble. Squinting, I could barely distinguish a green aura from what I now assumed was a Magian. The Magian waved his hand lazily, and a breach in the dimensional barrier of this world opened up. The size was easily 100 feet tall, and out of the void strode a monster of all monsters. It was black, almost inky-like skin with gleaming white teeth all over its body and head. It had no eyes, nose, or ears, just hundreds of mouths with sharp teeth everywhere. Stood on 3 legs and had 6 arms. Instead of hands, it had different colored glowing stones. I tried Appraiser's Oculus on this and only got back a name, Baby Tazikine. That thing is only a baby? I said out loud in disbelief. Is that true? How do you know that? Dave asked without looking away. I told him what my skill told me. Good, that means its most powerful skill, charged primordial beams, will be C rank. Still, this monster is B rank, and if that Magian attacks directly, he is an S rank at the very least. Tomian, get ready to evacuate everyone while I hold this thing off. Tomian appeared and started grabbing people even as the Baby Tazikine started charging up its primary attack skill. Tomian could warp people a medium distance away, but only one at a time. We all started to run away from camp in the opposite direction to give Dave space to fight when Zara got her leg stuck in a fissure in the ground, and Toby tripped and trunk planted into a sharp rock. He should have been fine to get back up and moving, but depression took over again and he just lay there accepting his fate. I turned and ran back to Zara and was in the process of freeing her leg when I heard and felt the pressure of an energy release. Turning to the monster, all 6 hands had beams of energy screaming directly toward us. Thought acceleration activated subconsciously, I realized, as the beams of energy inched their way toward me in slow motion. I had 2 options: rip her leg free and use acceleration to try and get clear, leaving Toby to his fate, or stand and be a shield. I stood and became a shield, turning my prosthetic into shield mode and holding it in the direct line of fire. I activated barrier tier 1 rank 1. Then I shifted into partial transformation up to 50% just as the hexatic beams hit me. I shifted back on my feet several inches until my feet hit another fissure and found a purchase to anchor myself somewhat. The beams were fire, ice, toxin, chaos, dark, and lightning damage, at least according to the damage notifications flashing in my vision. My barrier skill broke within a second, and I could feel the splash of energies wash over my shield and slam into my body, with armor melting, freezing, and all sorts of other things I didn't expect. It moved to my flesh, muscles, and more. I gritted my teeth under the onslaught and activated rage to get past the intense pain, and then I went into phase 2 as the seconds ticked by. Even with pain suppressor, enhanced strength, and enhanced durability from my species traits, my knees nearly buckled under the strain and agony, yet I held knowing Zara and Toby were behind me. The pain skyrocketed as I struggled to keep a hold of my sanity until I couldn't. The rage skill tapped into the genuine rage of my inner beast, and as I slipped into phase 3 of rage, I completed my total transformation for the first time in nearly 2 years since killing my brother. The full 15-foot jet black werewolf emerged as a mighty howl escaped my gnarled lips. I was far larger than anything I remembered before, and my clawed feet dug into the stone as the energy poured on unrelenting for a grand total of 20 seconds before dying out. It felt to me like hours had passed and, with a sheer force of will, I stayed standing. Harry also helped by clamping down on my pain receptors. Phase 3 and my full transformation completely lost its steam as my Astra levels nearly bottomed out. I collapsed to my knees with more than 20% of my prosthetic arm destroyed or had metallic mushrooms forming. My right hand and my arm up to my elbow was down to a bone nub with third-degree charcoal tendons, muscles, and meat clinging to bits of blackened bone. Was the same for parts of my upper thighs that were also exposed under the shield. I also had various toxins flowing through my body, which was evident, with the black veins running across my neck and face. I slowly turned back to human as bits of fur fell out and turned to ash. My armor was shredded and most of my flesh was cooked. I hit the ground in a wet thump. I saw Akoth and Dave attacking the baby Tazikeen with a flurry of powerful attacks, and I could barely turn my head to see if Zara was okay. My familiar picked her up after she got herself free of the fissure and ran out of camp at top speed, with Toby trailing behind in a panicked mad dash. I found out later that Farah bit him until he started moving. Notice, the conditions have been met. And that was all I saw before I punched the ground with my face and decided it was immediately nap time. A day or so later I finally awoke. I was in a cot inside a tent with the light of a campfire dancing outside. Looking down at my body, I saw my armor was removed, and my legs had bandages on them, as did my right arm. The good news was that it appeared I had a hand again, though I couldn't see it directly. There was at least a hand shape under the bandages. Toby came in to check on me, saw I was awake, and started panicking. You shouldn't be awake right now, or even alive, really. My healing spells are only subpar. I was sure you were going to die this whole time. Toby, you need to work on those bedside manners. It wouldn't help, he said with a downcast sigh. I'll go let the others know. You're up. Then in a hushed mutter to himself as he walked out the tent. Unless I'm hallucinating and he's really dead. Or worse, a ghost. Oh no. Maybe he's a dead ghost and will haunt me. I'm not. But he was gone already. It was only a tent, and Toby did have big ears, but it wasn't worth trying. I took some time to go over all the notifications I had received. Chapter 11. Is that a ninja turtle? Akoth one, but in a fit of rage, he burned down all the tents. We recovered gold and materials plundered from raided convoys that prompted this hunt in the first place. Then we moved to the last spot. This final bandit camp was by far the largest. It contained what appeared to be the headquarters of the bandits. We listened to the report, and when hearing there were around 70 bandits, more than a few low whistles echoed in response. No wonder this final camp was set for the 6 remaining hunter prospects, I thought. Akoth and I were supporting them as a backup and providing leadership as needed. But this was the final trial to see if the others could hack it, so to speak. The 3 camps were spread west of the ramp leading to the northern kingdoms. Technically, the ramp was called Castellum's Pass. At the bottom of the pass is a massive open field and many roads leading in various directions, including the Great Monster Forest. To the east and west of the pass are many other magic zones with differing climates and monsters. Then beyond them along each coast were the southern Kojin kingdoms, or what was more commonly known as the eastern or western kingdoms. But to the northerners those kingdoms were all south of them. Due west along the mountain ridge, about 12 hours' ride, was where the bandits made camp for the main base, and the 2 smaller camps spread out a bit away from the mountains to be within a mile of a major road. Merchants used the roads and always had hunters, mercs, or private house guards as muscle in case they ran into monsters. Still, while bandits occasionally were a problem, no one could really afford to hire enough guards to safeguard against that possibility on every run. But they always get reported to the MHA. Also, bandits would occasionally ambush hunter teams, especially if they were tired and worn down after a long day. So, you're now thinking, why do bandits continue to become bandits if they're constantly being dealt with? Likely the reason is that they're stupid, greedy idiots. However, this was one of the most extensive operations to spring up in a long time, and for some reason it was handed to a bunch of prospect hunters. Which begged the question, why was Dave an overseer? I couldn't imagine him being a permanent overseer with his skills. So I asked him while everyone was preparing for the last raid. I was brought on for this exam because of 3 reasons. One was you, as I'm sure you've probably figured out by now. The other was Akoth. He is a mystery. He was raised and trained in one of the southern kingdoms and apprenticed under a master from the northern kingdom. We had little information on him, except that he has a great number of skills, especially high-tiered ones. He is also rumored to have a champion blessing, which makes him incredibly rare, he said candidly. And the third reason would be the bandits, I'm assuming. He nodded. I am the guarantee that the issue is resolved. If you guys couldn't do it, then I would. The image doesn't screw up these contracts. The merchant guilds pay us a lot to solve their problems. Everyone was ready to go, and we decided to split the group. I would lead Kaylin, Zara, and Toby down the left side of the mountain. We were stationed on a ledge overlooking the camp. Akoth took Sarah, Striker, and Wrath down the right side. There were no clocks or signals we could send, so we decided we'd let Akoth's team strike first, and while they had the camp's attention, we would attack the other side in the chaos. My team would be fast ambushers, strike quickly and retreat. Toby would heal any wounds, and then we'd repeat the process. Orasense told me the majority of the bandits were E rank, with a handful at D rank. I couldn't distinguish from my position in the trees anyone higher than that. While my group consisted of Kaylin, Zara, Toby, and Androndius, 2 of which were D rank and 2 at E rank, making it 3 total at D rank if you count me. Akoth's team was all E rank except for himself, so why did we get the healer? Akoth said his team would engage and stay in action, and that would expose Toby. I shrugged. The battle went according to plan, and the enemy was knocked off rather quickly until a C ranker appeared. Akoth stepped in to fight him and let the rest of the group continue to battle. Akoth was outmatched in terms of base strength, speed, and durability. However, his surplus of skills and abilities allowed him to hold his own at least for a while. C rank meant a minimum of red aura, and it also meant the baseline attributes were significantly higher than the D rank. Akoth was high D rank and trained by a champion hunter. However, his ability, training, and skills could only make up so much, so Akoth started to lose by attrition. He couldn't compete in terms of raw Astra. I wanted to jump in and back him up, but I didn't, since I had my responsibilities and more combatants were noticing my team. Standing just behind the enemy's front line was a snakefolk who held up some kind of stringed instrument I wasn't familiar with and started playing a song. In moments my entire side froze, including the floating spirits, except for Androndius. He played his lute and erected several protective shields, which blocked the incoming spells and weapon attacks before they could land on the frozen party. House use not affected by my charms. The snake man hissed. You can't place a charm on someone that is already charmed, Androndius replied. Who charmed you? Why, I did, of course. He paused his playing to give a wicked smile before playing another tune that broke the charm effect on his allies. As soon as they became free, Zara cast her dice of fate. 2 large glowing dice appeared and tumbled a short distance. One landed on Cyclops and the other on absolute defense. The Cyclops first appeared and was easily 20 feet tall, and wearing crude knight's armor, mostly patchwork together. It raised a hand, then a mini fortress rose all around him and carried us into the air, until we were elevated above the camp and standing behind walls. An invisible barrier also sprung up around the fort in the shape of a dome. Kaylin used the height to send out her emerald light spirit to snipe at bandits in quick succession. Meanwhile, Zara risked using Omen on the Cyclops, since the second die for defense would stay in play. A moment later, piercing golden lights raced down from the heavens and shone over the Cyclops like spotlights at a concert. Trumpets played, and I swore I could even see doves flying back and forth, but the light was too intense to make them out for sure. The Cyclops grew another 12 feet, and its armor transformed into a full red plate armor gleaming in the golden light. With the transformation complete, it revealed dragon horns and wings attached to the back of the Cyclops, and the light and music faded. Androndius played a song during the transformation, which resulted in the Cyclops gaining an aura which boosted its strength. Further, the C ranker turned out to be a freaking ninja turtle and was batting Akoth around the place when a roar boomed so loud it shook the camp. Turning to face the source, the turtle man's eyes widen upon seeing a monster in the middle of the camp and all his remaining allies fleeing in terror. The enemies he faced came in strong and fast and did a lot of damage at first, but they were hopelessly outnumbered, and now he had them mostly down and hurting. Even their leader, which showed significant potential, was slowly losing steam. Should have been an easy victory until this Cyclops came crashing in. Then he noticed the fortress and green and purple energy beams cutting down his allies. As they tried to flee, something moved so fast that even his reflexes nearly missed it. There was a man in expensive custom armor blitzing any that tried to escape into the woods. He wielded a massive warhammer with some strange blade on top, yet to his aura sense skill he was a mere D ranker. He saw movement out of the other corner of his eye and turned just in time to catch Akotha's fist. The explosive fist skill was annoying, but nothing his titanium skin skill couldn't handle. As he diffused yet another explosion, with a powerful roundhouse kick to Akotha's stomach, he launched the D ranker backward a dozen yards even though he was in full bear mode. He smiled at the bear, tumbling head over heels, until he came to a stop and didn't get back up. Now stay down, will you? Have a worthy opponent to take care of, the C ranker sneered. He turned back to the Cyclops, wondering if he should engage it or test out its strength first, when a massive red beam of energy cracked the air and split the camp down the middle. The Cyclops unleashed its eye beam and instantly turned the turtle to soup that splashed about the cracked and scorched ground in a bloody mess. Amongst the raging fires, scattered corpses, devastated tents and equipment, and the permanent scar left upon the ground, I wondered if we had gone a bit overboard for the first time. I didn't ponder that for long as the air became heavy with a new aura crashing down on the camp. The oppressive killing intent wasn't like anything the previous rankers I'd seen give off back when they rolled into our camp blasting their auras. No, this was far worse, like a wall crashing down to smash or smother anything beneath it. Even the Cyclops dropped to a knee under the weight of it. A wave of destructive energy sliced through the Cyclops and the fortress, instantly destroying both and tossing my people out in the explosion. An A ranker stepped out of the woods. He looked at me with hate that my inner beast knew all too well. It was the hate of lost comrades, the hate of either being responsible or too late to help. Why this Kojin wasn't in the camp during the whole raid was a mystery, but he arrived now. Akoth finally got up and started dragging his team off the ground and throwing them over his large shoulder. He looked at me, grinned with his teeth, then turned and ran away, leaving me to die to an A ranker. I glanced over my shoulder and saw Kalen hauling off Zara with Androndius dragging off Toby. I needed to give them some time to get away in time for Dave to arrive. Standing there, acting like the aura power was nothing although I was giving all my strength to the effort of standing, I shouted at the new guy. Is that all? Are you the boss of these maggots, or did they hire you as an attack dog? He didn't speak a single taunt, threat, or give any verbal response at all. The A ranker simply morphed into his beast mode. For additional long spider like arms, mandibles, and extra eyes all emerged like a nightmare. His armor became shredded tatters as his chest grew bulbous and black with red markings. Nope! I shouted out loud and turned tail, running at top speed. Harry! Eject the self-destruct from my arm now! I shouted out loud, not even bothering to try and speak mentally. // you know you only have one of those, right, and likely never have one again? Just eject it. Spider! I caught the small fusion bomb and tossed it behind me. It landed roughly a dozen feet from the ugly freak. The spider was more than angry enough to chase me until the object landed in the sand. He paused to take a look. Crap, why is there an A ranker down there? Dave said upon seeing the new arrival. Our intel didn't even mention the C ranker, and now there is an A. I'll go, Tomian said. No, it will be me. This is the reason I was brought on, after all. Wait, what did Zeke just throw behind him? Dave activated his skill to get a better look as an explosion unlike anything he'd ever witnessed erupted before his enhanced eyes. It nearly blinded him, but his reflexes were fast, and he managed to squint and use his hands to shield his vision. The explosion fully encompassed the camp, half the lake, and dozens of feet into the forest. The heat from the blast was felt from their position midway up the mountain. There was a cloud-shaped burning mushroom, and a second later a boom nearly deafened him, followed by a quake that caused several rocks to break loose on the mountainside. When it was over, a crater like none he'd ever seen before was all that was left, and the last bit of lake was pouring into it. Dave even saw the partial remains of a crotastasis as it flowed into the new opening from the lake. That was AS rank water Cordra. What the actual? Notice. The conditions have been met. The killing blow of 8 or more enemies that were at least 2 ranks above you, along with at least one that was 3 ranks above you, has granted you a new title. New title gained. Monster Slayer. Description. All base attributes are doubled. Astra is increased by 50. Wait, what? That would put my strength, durability, dexterity, intelligence, stamina, and regeneration to twice my current limits. In the 4 days since my last title that put me to 294 Astra, I had gained 6 more points through mediation and training plus this 50, and now I'm sitting at 350. Just incredible. At least this title didn't require me to almost die. // It seems there were more than a few powerful monsters in that lake. Good thing you didn't try swimming in that one, lol. / Did you just say the words? LOL? What does that even mean? / Ugh. You are so uncultured. Did you live under a rock? / Yes. The secret compound where they made me into the weapon I am today was under a very big rock called a freaking mountain. / Okay, sheesh, it was rhetorical. You had to have the internet at least, right? Wait, don't answer. Yes, I already know. You're such a loser. / I seem pretty awesome from where I'm standing. You're just a piece of magical hardware stuck in my brain. / Hey. Take that back. I couldn't take that back. The new title took effect and my attributes doubled, which meant thicker and denser muscles, skin, and organs. I collapsed under the transformation and pain that racked my body. Even my brain felt like it was being hammered. I wouldn't say I was dumb, despite Harry's claims, but I wasn't a genius either. I could do math reasonably well, but that was a product of intense drilling, not inherent talent. But doubling all attributes meant my brain was developing new neural pathways, and that I resented. Most people would crave to be smarter. My generation even made it possible with various implants. But to a soldier like me, instinct, training, gut feeling, and quick decisions were the difference between a successful mission and death. Suppose I suddenly knew more than I should. Like all the possible outcomes of my actions, it might cause hesitation. Hesitation will lead to mistakes, which at worst is death. It is also the likely outcome eventually. Regardless, this was happening, and I wasn't taking it well. And for the lost count of how many times I passed out and kissed the ground with my whole face, Zara arrived, picked me up, and dragged me to Toby, who was drinking an Astra potion, something I didn't know even existed. He went to heal me but couldn't detect anything to heal. Go figure. No one needs me. That's not true, Toby, Zara said, putting a hand on his shoulder. You kept us all alive. I healed the enemy at least 3 times, and I hit you once with one of my attacks by mistake, he replied flatly. Zara's eyes grew big. I never even got close enough to be a target. Everyone knows to attack the healer first, and I failed at being attacked. Toby's voice was slow, deep, and completely drained. The sadness was overwhelming, and Zara was lost for words. Kaelin punched the elephanty on the arm. You did fine, you dope. Cheer up. Come on, let's drag this overpowered loaf up the mountain and regroup. Sarah was fawning over my unconscious body while Tomian tried to pry her off me. Although I was not currently awake, I was aware of something like a presence or pressure lightly brushing against my thoughts. First I was curious and was about to let it in when I felt a hunger or desire to claw out my secrets. I pushed back, and the light brush became a forceful drill seeking knowledge on my attributes, Astra levels, skills, and almost everything about me. I pushed back harder, and with sheer force of will, which I had plenty of, thanks to the agonizing procedure of becoming a werewolf and a weapon of war, I removed the presence from my mind. Dave's eyes snapped open after his Tier 7 rank 4 identify skill failed. Damn. I think he pushed me out. What? That's impossible, isn't it? Tomian asked. Clearly not. Did you get anything? I got a sense of how powerful his attributes are, and he has a lot of skills. But we knew that already. But no, I didn't get anything worthwhile with the exception that his willpower is impressive. I also got the sense that he has been through more combat than all of us combined. Truly? Tomian asked in surprise. She knew how many monsters they'd killed, along with Kojin, that warranted it. They had precise trackers, and the numbers were high, especially for Dave. Dave in return simply nodded. Chapter 12. Harry the Great. We pulled into the city at sunset, and I invited everyone to the restaurant. Despite the group's overwhelming sense of tiredness, all accepted, including the Jackal twins. However, the bourbon and wine were done now, and everyone's spirits suddenly improved. VeLana found me and already had a glass of wine in her hand. It seemed she had been a frequent visitor of the place every day since the new items came out, even using her VIP status to skip the lines. She was a sight for sore eyes. I hadn't realized how much I missed her until that moment. She had been the first friendly face I saw since coming to this world and arguably the greatest help. But at this moment I think I had genuine feelings for her, something utterly alien to me due to my conditioning. As a weapon for the military, VeLana was, a bit happier to see me. She was already rosy-cheeked and completely ignored Sarah sitting next to me as she plumped down in my lap. Could hear several gasps in the background as many in the restaurant knew she was a princess and had just witnessed something juicy to gossip about. I never thought to find out if there was a version of a newspaper here, but if there was, guessing tomorrow's headline didn't require any more clues. Oh well, when in Rome. She ate some food off my plate and we finished our drinks and bid everyone good night. I would inform my team of the new additions tomorrow and hopefully they'll be alright about it since I didn't discuss it with them first. Spoil alert, they weren't happy but admitted it was a problem solved. When VeLana and I arrived back at my place, she strode into my room, started stripping, and then headed into the shower. I knew she was tipsy, but I was sure she wasn't that elaborated. I think when she called my name, my own clothes vanished before my brain had a chance to realize they were gone, and when I stepped into the shower room, I knew right then and there this woman was insane. The orange glow of the water was not even the first clue. It was the heavily dense rainforest-type humidity that had my walls sobbing that gave it away. If walls could talk or cry, it would be anguished wails. I started to weigh the situation to decide if the risk of burning to death in a fire shower was worth stepping in there. Then my brain thought I had enough durability and regeneration that it should be fine. Hold my beer, I muttered to myself as I stepped in and Chapter 13. The Terror of All Mortals. It was nice just sitting and relaxing. I had a lot on my mind to work through. I knew that. But distracting myself with hunting and training all day and then enjoying the evening and the cool breeze the night brought was comforting, at least until the memories returned. It had been a long while now, but the events back on Earth still clung to me. The events that led to Units X1 and X2 clashing resulted in many deaths, including innocent civilians. X1 ran out of serums after they fled, and when forced to transform, the rampage was devastating. I don't want to go back. I would rather stay here and move on with my life, even experiencing this new thing called feelings and love. However, I also knew deep down that if the opportunity arose to go back and kill every last one of those bastards, I would. VeLana sat down and leaned her head on me, and I felt my growing anger subside a little. I was just about to suggest to discreetly disappear into my tent when we heard a scream and then saw Harry zipping out of the woods, followed closely by a fully transformed cheetah. Then we heard trees cracking and breaking. These weren't the skyscraper-sized trees, but they were still significant, and something that could break them would be a problem. Although yellow bark and baby blue leaves made me also want to start smashing trees. Maybe this monster is just misunderstood and is actually relatable. For long muscular arms with bony hands, each sporting 3 fingers with long claws, reached out of the forest between 2 trees. 2 hands gripped the sides of each trunk and pushed. With hardly a struggle, the trees uprooted and crashed to the sides, creating a pathway for the 40-foot monster to exit. It had a head that looked twice as large as the body, with a mouth capable of swallowing entire treetops, let alone little old monster hunters like us. The skin was mottled brown and yellow but had bone extrusions all over it, most ending in sharp spikes. As the thing roared at us, I used my appraiser's Oculus skill and got a name. Abeloth. Astra power 730. Threat level B. Skills. Monster strength T7 R4. All-seeing eye T8 R3. Absolute devour T5 R3. Banshee's wail T4 R5 and greater. Defense T5 R2. This thing was barely across the threshold into B class but was still 2 ranks higher than us. Luckily there were 8 of us, 9 if you count Farah. We don't count Harry. It's an Abeloth B ranked. Harry yelled as he flew past us and kept going. The terror of all mortals. It only has one eye, and of course it is looking at me. It has been, well, not exactly fun but at least interesting. Goodbye guys, Toby said right away. Shut up Toby and get in position, VeLana yelled. The big guy looked disheartened as he wallowed into his spot. Everyone was taking up battle positions. We had hammered out several formations based on the type of threat or threats we faced. This one and most of every position had me in the front, since I could take a hit and give it, then heal up afterward on my own. It just made sense. Everyone spread out in a triangle behind me. Toby took up the back of the triangle in the center with TelVurn directly in front of him and he directly behind me. The sisters took up the sides of the triangle, with Jackson on one side with Kaylin and VeLana on the other with Zara. Kaylin and VeLana were similar in powers as far as functionality went. They both could stand their ground and attack with range while using their floating items or spirits for defense. Jackson was also ranged with his weapons but had created several floating shields for defense and could help shield Zara. TelVurn would provide direct aid to me with his summons while keeping Toby safe and in range to heal everyone. Over the 2 months, everyone aside from TelVurn, the sisters, and myself gained almost 200 Astra through battles, meditation, and core consumption. Only gained 72 Astra because I had already gained massive boosts earlier. During the trial, I was now at 441 out of 470 Astra needed to rank up. TelVurn was 391 when I first met him, and was now at 473 Astra, making him the first to C rank. Jackson went from 209 to 404 Astra, while VeLana went from 206 to 427. It was apparently easier to gain new levels at the beginning than later on, which I guess makes sense with the timeline given to me for the average ascension through the ranks. It seemed to take a bit more each time to get a 1-point increase. We were still only 2 months into the approximately 5 months of uncommon cores. I didn't have too many for rare through ultimate, and I wasn't sure how I wanted to use them yet. Kaylin and Zara were already mid-D rank when I met them and thus also only gained very little, both being now 451 and 468 Astra. Toby also gained a decent chunk, but his general disposition made meditating nearly worthless, so he was sitting just across the line into D at 215 Astra, just a few points higher than Sarah at 217. Seeing a monster with over 700 Astra was understandably daunting, especially without Dave to back us up. My status sheet was starting to grow and I even upgraded skills and gained new ones. Status sheet. Name Ezekiel Connery. Race human. Rank bronze threat D. Or a purple. Astra power level 441. Blessings. Divine Cyberlord. AI controller. Harry-Anus. Pain suppressor. Appraiser's Oculus. HUD. Fusion engine. Communications chip. Divine Astra King. Way of the Astra. Increased skill chance. Master Berserker. Rage. Tough body. Stamina steel. Titles. Undying Monster Slayer. Racial traits. Enhanced hearing. Enhanced olfactory. Night vision. Or transformation. Partial transformation. Greater strength. Venomous bite. Venomous claws. Greater regeneration. Greater durability. Skills. Aura Sense T2R5. Danger Sense TR2. Cleaning TR4. Conceal T4R1. Rune Crafting TR5. Rune Forging T2R4. Rune Tech T1R3. Skill Boost T5R5. Thought Acceleration T3R1. Acceleration T3R3. Barrier T2R1. Healing TVR4. Men Wound T3R5. Astra Consumption T4R3. Chaos Flames T6R3. Tamer R1. Heal Familiar T1R4. Last Chance T7R2. Passive Healing T2R5. Toxin Resistance T2R3. False Data T7R1. Cooling Shield T1R4. Rain Shield T1R2. Stone Skin T4R2. Momentum Change TVR1. Sunder T6R2. Meteor Strike TR2. Farah, who had taken up position next to me, darted off to the side to try and grab attention so I could rush forward with acceleration phase 2 of Rage and phase 3 of my partial transformation. I took out the new axe and leaped upward toward the neck of the beast. Despite all my boosts, Farah still reached the Abeloth before I did and chomped down on the tree trunk-sized leg. My swing came down hard, but one of the arms swung up and intercepted the blow. The cut barely made a scratch, but the wind slice penetrated a little, causing some blood to spill. Before I even knew what was happening, I felt a clawed hand completely wrap around my body and pick me up. I barely got a glance to see the Abeloth now, sporting two new eyes on each side of its head before it threw me hard. I found myself skipping off the dirt and water of the lake we camped nearby. By some miracle I still held onto my axe and used it to stab the ground on the other side of the lake to slow myself down. Despite how tough I had become, I felt at least 3 ribs broken and my right arm was shattered. I've broken this many bones before from a fall once out of a helicopter, but this was considerably different. My head was rattled, I likely had a punctured lung, and there was this dull ringing in my ears. I coughed up blood and a fair amount of dirt. Oh look, some teeth too. Tried to roll onto my back but couldn't move off my left side. Mentally I activated healing even as Mend Wound kicked in as well. Since I was out of the range of combat, passive healing and my racial passive greater regeneration also got to work. While I gave it a minute to let things put themselves back into place, I saw a howling giant get summoned, then modified by grotesque amplification, one of the monster skills I gave him. Then TelVurn used all 3 of his abilities on the giant that was now bulging awkwardly and disproportionately with new growths of muscles. The ability full equip decked out the lopsided behemoth with spiked armor, a massive spiked club, and a shield. Then TelVurn used overcharge, which caused it to gain a full rank, pushing it to a C rank. Lastly, he used duplicate, and a second grotesque howling giant appeared. The 2 summons were about a head shorter than the Abeloth and a rank down, but they occupied the creature with a surprising savagery. Sarah was above the Abeloth using her signature acid breath, but was also using stone shot in her new skill Stone Spear, alternating when Stone Spear was on cooldown. Despite her Way of the Wind ability, she hadn't had a chance to gain new spells in the water element or the wind element, and she found those elements were weak against the Abeloth. Back on Earth it would have taken hours to heal this much damage, but thanks to magic I was up in a minute, and by the time I jumped across the lake in a single bound I was back to full health and charging fast. With her a ranked Emerald Spirit, Kaylin had moved a bit closer and was firing off green beams of energy between howling giant attacks. The energy beams were strong enough to cut off the bone and leave large slices in the flesh. I let off with lightning as I approached, which worked out very well due to the bones on the outside connecting to bones on the inside. I also peppered it with a dozen rounds of chaos flame bullets before resummoning my axe and leaping. I know what you're thinking, this didn't work out so well the first time, but I didn't do the same thing this time. Instead I came up a bit short and activated Sunder. Strike the ground, causing a line of destruction. The distance is based on how much Astra you use. Rate is 1 yard per 5 Astra. The destruction effect will also split the ground, causing a varying degree of drop. Also based on amount of Astra spent. Rate of drop is 1 yard per 20 Astra. The line of destruction appeared as a wave of black energy at least several feet high and moved forward, splitting the land as it went. I put in a good 60 Astra, which the skill intuitively understood my desired amount, and struck the side of the leg and the higher part of one arm. Both limbs cracked open, wide, spewing blood and chunks of bone, but the powerful defense of the monster, along with its defense skill, kept the limbs from being severed completely. However, the split ground caused it to stumble and get its shredded leg stuck. The Abeloth used the Banshee's wail skill and dropped everyone to their knees, holding their ears. The skill also sent hallucinations for an added effect. The Venus flytrap with swap fates conjured by the Dice of Fate nullified the effect on Zara and caused the Abeloth to endure a pause of hallucinations. Instead, she also tried casting Threads of Fate, but the Abeloth resisted the debuff. So instead she cast Malice on me, which boosted my Astra further and doubled my strength and total damage output. It also put me into a killing frenzy, which caused my rage to activate to phase 2 without my consent. Sarah crashed to the ground a moment later, and I missed a breath before I saw her holding her head in pain from the hallucinations. At least I knew she was alive. The twin howling giant summons from TelVurn also seemed utterly unaffected by the Banshee's wail and could freely move past the 4 arms and get behind the monster that was now bent over with 1 foot stuck in the ground. The giants used their club to start popping eyeballs as they bashed at the monster's head. On both sides, which cancelled the effect of the Banshee's wail but also on everyone else. Jackson spit to the side, pulled his new cannon from his storage space, and fired off a shell filled with Inferno Smite. The shell smashed open on the creature's shoulder, and a black sigil that marked the shoulder appeared. Then, out of the ground, probably from hell, a black flame shot up to smite the Abeloth. Black flame savagely burned and spread across the flesh, and the Abeloth gripped the ground with all four arms and opened its giant maw. A massive rush of air poured into the mouth like a vacuum, sucking everything up within range, including the black flames, the chaos flames, the lightning, the green beams, and the howling giants. We all could feel the pull of the skill and used all of our effort to back away. When the Abeloth cancelled the skill, it reached down into the split earth with all four hands and ripped the ground in a wave of dirt and rocks. Watch the wave of dirt blow over our formation and bury my team alive. Farah was on the opposite side of the creature from me and out of the wave's path. She used acceleration and lava slash to rake a glowing red trail across the right side of the body before jumping back and letting loose a blast of Inferno breath. I used all my considerable strength to jump as high into the air as possible, while roaring savagely. I then activated my new skill Meteor Strike. Meteor Strike. When high above the target, rapidly descend while building up a fiery aura around your weapon. The strike will deal high pyroflame damage. Despite missing several eyes, the all-seeing eye skill was still active, which meant that although the Abeloth had turned its attention to Farah, it still reached up to block my incoming attack with one of its hands. I blasted through the hand and into the back of the skull, splitting it open and down the spine into the midsection of the back. The creature roared in pain but still wasn't finished yet. I grabbed a hold of the spine even as it started twisting and turning frantically. I vanished the axe, took my gun off my hip, shoved it deep inside the monster, and let loose an entire clip before jumping, often landing several feet away. Chaos flames flickered up like a barbecue grill, along with boils, frost, and mushrooms that grew in various places until suddenly a tree burst out the back and roots dug out the front of the flesh and down into the ground, effectively trapping the Abeloth in place. My team dug themselves out and I nodded to Farah to help. Everyone managed to pull themselves free just in time to see the final death throes of the B-class monster. I just kept wailing on it with my hammer until Zara cancelled the effect of her buff spell. "Geez, overkill much?" Jackson asked as he was knocking off loose dirt from his clothes. I could tell by their eyes and the slight tilt of their heads that many were listening to the world voice about upgrading various skills or even granting new skills. I also had several notifications about upgrades, primarily to my healing and durability. "Toby, good job out there, but go ahead and get everyone topped off, thanks, buddy," I said before I went ahead and used Astra consumption on the Abeloth, and gained an impressive 29 Astra off of one use. And the system awarded me another rank of the skill to rank 3. I was now 470 Astra and the second highest in our group. One more single point would put me into the next category. For a short while we harvested and collected loot. It wasn't much due to the total amount of damage caused, but it was a large Cordra and we got enough to make it worth it. The loot was pretty good too, with it dropping for uncommon monster cores. VeLana said it was likely undigested cores from other Cordra the Abeloth ate recently. "Hey, over here, come look at this," Zara called out. She had moved down to the lake to wash the nastiness of battle and harvest off her and spotted a cave in the distance. Usually it wouldn't matter much, except this cave had stairs. We all trekked over and then hiked around the lake to get to the cave. "What do you think it is?" Sarah asked. The cave entrance wasn't too large. If Dave were here he might not fit, but TelVurn could fit if he hovered as low as possible and ducked his head. The stairs led down and we could feel ambient Astra flowing out of it. "It seems we stumbled upon a nexus," TelVurn explained. "And before you ask, human," I closed my mouth. "When a powerful Cordra dies and drops an ultimate core and no one collects it, it can merge with various high Astra resources, such as orichalcum veins or ether bark, etc. When that happens over time, the area transforms into a nexus and is governed by the Astra itself." "Like the world voice?" I asked. "Yes. The nexus will create several floors filled with Cordra and traps. Lures people in with all kinds of rewards such as increased chance for skills, upgrades, faster Astra gains, and even literal treasures, such as magical armor, weapons, and items. Oh, we are so doing this, right? I asked, but all the attention turned to Harry's floating shell. He was spinning and blowing steam. Are you okay, buddy? Zeke, this is dungeon, he exclaimed very pointedly, like I would have the foggiest idea what he was talking about. A dungeon as in like a prison? Ugh, you uncultured nitwit. There are hundreds of thousands of books, movies, TV shows, and games on your world that features dungeons to explore. One is called a dungeon crawl. We have to crawl through it? Is that because of the traps? Harry blew a gasket at my question. He went off on a long trail of expletives that made even I blush. Then Harry, I want to say, stomped off in a tantrum, but he has no legs. Instead, he zipped off into the Nexus with scanners blasting in all directions. I guess we're doing this? Sarah asked. It would actually be foolish. Nexuses are not easy, and death is a high risk. That statement felt flat compared to what we had just faced outside. But he was the expert in the group. But, TelVurn continued, by the feel of this one, he had his hand hovering over the entrance. I would say it is around D rank, but it could also be C rank. We won't know for sure until we encounter the first monster. So we take it slow and feel it out. If it becomes too difficult, we back out. We can back out, right? Yes, human, and we can run the higher levels several times when the Cordra respawn. I thought we had a deal, man. My name is Zeke. Also, is the rank of this Nexus set or? It grows in strength over time. Eventually, if not defeated, it unleashes hordes of Cordra into the wild. Each will be at that point at least A ranked, with a few at S. Oh, lovely, nothing like hordes of high-level monsters running amok. So how did a Cordra die with an ultimate core and not get harvested? Everyone stared at me before they remembered I was not from around here. Zeke, Cordra are not immortal. Magen are, but over time, sometimes thousands of years, Cordra will die naturally. One such Cordra from the lake likely grew so old that it came ashore and then perished on its own. Oh, okay, that makes sense. So, let's get started. The sun is just coming up, and none of us has had any sleep, but it's a new day and treasures await. Took the first position since I had the highest chance of surviving a trap. Could also communicate with Harry, who was already mapping the first chapter 14. Dungeon Crawl. I pulled up Harry's video and multispectral scans on my prosthetic arm's holo projector. I then had a long conversation about holo projections and technology on my planet, since most of those present hadn't actually seen me use this device. I had come clean about my true origins to the ones that joined us from our trials. Now that I think about it, I could watch movies through this since Harry has the entire internet downloaded. Huh, I'm an idiot. I sighed and pinched the bridge of my nose. I could have used this to explain anatomy during our Astra meditations better. Add yet another thing to my growing list to do. The stairs descended about 13 feet and opened up into a hallway. Farah stayed outside since she was too large, and we filed down and into the hallway. There were rooms spread out along the hallway on both sides. Harry returned and reported seeing various D-rank Cordra. It looks like TelVurn was right. None of the Cordra responded to Harry's floating form, whether that was due to his silent movement or limited Astra output, who could say. No traps from the scans, and each room has a chest guarded by groups of Cordra. First room are Evilids. What kind of name is that? Who names these things anyway? We entered cautiously. The Nexus or dungeon was well lit from glowing algae on the walls everywhere. It almost looked like veins on the wall. The Evilids were dog-sized Cordra resembling cabbage pods with stick legs. Couldn't fathom why something so harmless-looking was rank D. There were 8 of them in this room, and they were all standing there until we crossed the entrance. Then in a flash, blades of leaves hard as diamonds shot at us in the hundreds. I took several direct hits before activating my prosthetic shield and barrier. Tens of other blades passed me in that instant, striking several behind me before TelVurn summoned his gate mimic modified by grotesque amplification. The normal gate mimic takes the form of a wide purple gate, but instead of bars, there is a black void that purplish-blue tongues shoot out to snare victims. Now the mimic had mouths all over the purple metal frame, with each sporting a plethora of smaller tongues, and they were good at catching leaf blades. A cry from behind me alerted us that Toby was missing half his trunk. I also noticed everyone except for Kaelin, TelVurn, and VeLana had a shard either stuck in them or long gashes from blades that grazed them. I too noticed I had several stuck in me and cuts carved across me. Even my prosthetic arm had new grooves and one blade stuck in the shield. Manipulating the nanites caused the blade to drop and the damage to disappear. Kaylin's emerald spirit protected her better than the rest that were hit. I should have had my barrier up from the beginning, but lessons learned. The focus right now was to get a sobbing elephanty to focus and heal himself. Thankfully the girls were on it. TelVurn floated past me and to the other side of his shield. All 8 enemies were bound tightly, and he unleashed a flurry of solar rays. It was one of the few times I've seen him use any other magic spells instead of simply summoning his creatures and letting them fight. The solar rays were not as powerful as Kaylin's emerald spirit's beams, but his range was farther, and he could cast them quicker. The evilids were not very durable and quickly caught on fire from the attacks. Jackson popped around the other side of the gate with both his pistols drawn and unleashed rounds of ghostly arc bullets and inferno smite bullets. The sight was incredible and the fight ended quickly. The chest turned out to have enchanted items. These were different from runetech items. My ring was technically a skill-based item but was closer to an enchanted item than runetech was. There was a scepter, a dagger, 2 rings, and a monocle. The scepter granted extended spellcasting range and reduced Astra use. We unilaterally decided it would go to Toby. The dagger went to me since I was the only real frontline fighter, and it granted lifesteal along with phantom penetration. If the target was too tough to cut, the dagger could phase out and bypass the defense altogether, allowing it to strike at internal organs. Had an idea of placing it onto the top of my axe instead of the spike. Would make for an interesting addition. Both rings could store Astra. You had to fill it first, but one could quickly and easily restore their Astra level by using the ring. One went to TelVurn, and the other to Toby. It was decided that the best match would get the item, even if it meant more than one. There were plenty more rooms and chests after all. I got the monocle, of course. When worn, it would grant a magical disguise. The rest of the rooms, 6 in total, were all the same monsters and were easy to take down now that we knew what to expect. The chests were varying degrees of good enchanted items. The real prize was a personable shield generator. VeLana already had several skills to aid her in survival, and so did I. Zara therefore was given the item, which was even more potent than my barrier spell. It had to charge overnight but otherwise would last all day, or a large amount of damage. At the end of the hall was the floor boss, which unfortunately was not a single evilid. No, it was hundreds of evilids and a new type of Cordra called Moculid. The Moculids were slightly larger than the evilid but had a more spider-like frame. They didn't look like actual spiders, otherwise I'd have sat that one out. No, they looked more like metal military drones that walked on multiple spiked legs. Not metal though, some kind of wood-like flesh. Then in the back was the Queen Evilid, a C-rank boss. The little ones were everywhere, even on the walls and the ceiling, while the Moculids were all in the front and also numbered in the hundreds. TelVurn summoned his amped-up mimic again before we crossed the barrier that activates the enemies. We found that summons wouldn't be attacked unless they first attacked. Once the mimic was in place, everyone darted inside and immediately took cover. We started with every ranged attack we could first. Kaylin stood away from the mimic since her emerald spirit could intercept attacks quickly and had more range to shoot back. Her river spirit had gained an ability for water bullet and added its minor firepower to the fray. Sarah used her wind shield spell and took to the air to target evilids clinging to the ceiling. Zara rolled her dice of fate, and they landed on tardigrades. This usually microscopic creature was about the size of a bus and sported an almost worm-like body but bloated like a pig. It had 8 short, fat arms with claws for feet and a single weird eye or mouth on its face. Wasn't too sure, to be honest. What it was, however, was tough. Could survive any condition, including the vacuum of space. The second die landed on enable afflictions, meaning the tardigrades emitted an aura buff for the party. All our attacks would enable a host of varying afflictions. Among the possibilities, anything from crippling movement to diseases that cause bleeding or other bodily fluids to pour out of the enemy's eyes or ears. TelVurn already had his twin grotesque howling giants out and was firing off a host of solar-based spells. Jackson was also doing his part with his pistols. First his Gatling gun, then his cannon. The cannon could hit several enemies at once and mark them all for Inferno Smite. He also had rounds for his ghostly arc flames mixed in to give a nice spread of flame types. I added my bit of chaos flame rounds to get them spreading before I darted in with my axe in one hand and my sword in the other. I was strong enough to handle them both one-handed. The Maculids were melee fighters and were tougher and more resilient to elemental damage. They were decently durable and could take several hits from my sword with minimal damage. The axe did better and I decided to swap the sword for the Warhammer scythe weapon thingy. I needed a new name for it. Duel. Wielding two weapons designed to be two-handers was shocking, especially with how easy it was. The amount of strength I gained over the past few months was superhero-like. I dove into the killing and every return hit I took caused my body to become more durable against the next attack. My strength continued to rise as I took damage, making my weapons swing even faster as they appeared lighter and lighter. Stamina Steel's ability was hard at work, keeping me topped off as I became enthralled in the killing. Rage phase 1 and 2 kicked in as the enemies surged at me. As the flow of battle took me, the beast within began to show more and more. And next I knew it, I was half transformed. At this point I was basically the Wolfman from 2010. I don't know who saw what, but the blood and gore had drenched me through the armor. I became feral, lashing out wildly with every blow. It was VeLana's shout that snapped me out of my rage so I could finally dial it back. With their many faces, the howling giants shrieked something awful and gained the attention of dozens and dozens of enemies that eventually swarmed over them and took them down. They all turned to me as the next closest threat. With them gone, time seemed to slow down for me as the way of Astra began to take over. I could feel the innate Astra within each enemy and knew when to turn, strike, push, and back off. I let loose several sunders to wipe out swarms of monsters at a time, but there always seemed to be more. Eventually, they did stop surging toward me, and I let go of the rage ability. I felt the way of Astra also recede. All around me were mangled and mutilated corpses, and all around those were burning corpses of various blues, blacks, reds, and green flames. The only remaining monster was the queen, and I felt tapped out. "I'm out of rounds and Astra," Jackson yelled. I heard the grumpy lion snort a "me too" snort. VeLana was covered in blood as her floating weapons were finishing off enemies much closer to her than the long distance she preferred to fight at. So, she began walking toward the boss, determined to fight it since everyone else seemed tapped out. Kaylin joined her since Emmy, her emerald spirit, did most of her fighting. Kaylin still had her spell reserve she hadn't touched yet. Sarah landed next to Toby, battered and gashed, yet Toby, having just chugged another Astra potion, was already healing her. Zara cast Omen on me, figuring if it landed on Bad Omen, I was already too exhausted to do much harm to myself. The golden light shone upon me with trumpets, and yes, doves were flapping in the air. A surge of Astra and stamina coursed through, pushing me to a level higher than my phase 3 rage could do. I grew larger by a foot, and my armor, which was little more than scrapes hanging off my bare torso, reformed over my now fully healed body. I felt like a demigod. Kaylin and VeLana launched their ranged attacks first, and the Queen Evelid responded by sending a veritable tornado of leaf blades. Emmy's swirling defense allowed the little glowing green ball of energy to extend outward and around Kaylin to intercept any incoming attack. The downside was it couldn't catch all attacks, especially if they were everywhere. VeLana used all her weapons to create a shield to brace herself with, and Kaylin stepped behind her and used Emmy's ability to fill in the gaps. The best they could do, however, was brace against the storm. I charged in like a golden lightning bolt, ignoring the leaf blades, which only strengthened me. Crashing into the queen disrupted her attack and launched her backward into the wall, leaving a crater behind. The monster slowly drew itself out of the crack, but I was there again in a blur, striking with both weapons. Despite how powerful and durable I was, the queen got off one good shot with one of its clawed arms and pierced straight through my chest. I felt nothing. I noticed in the corner of my vision through my HUD that my body symbol had a prominent health shield symbol. Blinking a few times, it dawned on me. Almost died. I would have died. The Undying Title's ability, Last Chance skill, kicked in and saved me. The health shield took all the damage and pain with it, too. I was now at my peak strength and I brought both weapons down repeatedly. on the queen's head until she stopped moving. The very first thing I did was take off my wrecked armor and cast a cleaning spell over myself and my weapons. Then I spit up the blood that ended up in my mouth. I looked around at the carnage and realized how dangerous large-scale battles could be for me. Or perhaps how dangerous the berserker ability was. Hey Zeke, Jackson approached me. You okay? Yeah, sorry, just contemplating my reality. And what about the He waved a hand over his face to indicate he saw something strange. Yeah, it's nothing, just keep this between us please. Sure, but if you want to talk. I nodded at him and turned my attention to the rest of the team. Now that the floor boss was dead, a large chest appeared in the center of the room, and another set of stairs leading down opened up in the back wall. Despite the size of this new chest, we all sat down, pulled out water and food, and took a mental and physical break. TelVurn said that when defeated, the boss room becomes a safe haven to spend downtime in, so we took shifts taking naps to recharge before moving on. I consumed the queen and all the dead bodies in the room for an astounding 104. Astra. I was now 574, and the rank up cleared all my physical exhaustion and made me feel like I was floating on clouds. My mental exhaustion, though, was not so alleviated. I used my cleaning skill to wipe the filth off my body thoroughly and that of VeLana, and we took a nice nap together. The rest of the team got a water bath from Orby the river spirit. Jackson eventually cracked open the chest, and the rewards were rather nice for only the first floor. There were a handful of accessories. Holding one of the rings in my hand and passing Astra through it, I felt the enchantment. Wasn't words or an image but more of a knowing. Ring of the Deep Sea King. Swim speed is increased by 500%. Also gain the ability to breathe water and survive deep water pressures. This is neat. I handed it to VeLana. I wouldn't mind keeping that one if no one else wants it. She passed Astra into the ring to view the enchantment also. Her facial expression was the same as mine but was much cuter. She handed it back to me, and I slipped it on my finger next to the Monster King ring. Hey Zeke, you might want to take a look at this armor set, Jackson called for me. I went over and examined the set. It was incredible. My armor was tailored to adjust to my transformation and fit snugly on me. It was interlocking metallic scales with several runes in it, but as lovely as it was at best rated D rank and shown today that it couldn't take a hit well. This new armor was similar in design to my own, but it was hexagonal plate segments instead of scales. I liked this black obsidian armor with glowing green lines between each plate. The helm was straight Viking, complete with downward-facing ram horns. The armor also had a black cloak that looked shredded at the bottom but was by design, not by wear and tear. It also was ethereal green energy along the bottom edge and through each tear. Coincidentally had only the right arm for a full sleeve just like mine. Jackson saw the confusion on my face and explained. Nexuses tend to create custom treasures for the ones that partake in the trials. Not all treasures of course, but many from bosses especially will be tailored to us. I nodded in comprehension and picked up the armor to get a read on it. Nexus armor set. This armor's durability is equal to 200% of the wearer's durability. It also has high resistance to chaos energy, grotesque mutations, and all natural elements. This armor set will transform based on the wearer's transformation and, when damaged, will auto-repair over the course of 1 day. 2 rune slots are available. I took the time to change out of my armor set and into the new one. The rest of the treasure, a few more armor sets, and weapons got handed out to everyone that matched the best or hadn't gotten anything yet. There was even an item for Farah that would change everything later when I could give it to her. While we all rested, I finally turned my attention to the notifications I got. After the battle, I was happy to see Danger Sense, Barrier, Mend Wound, Astra, Consumption, and Stone Skin all rank up, and even more gratuitous than that, I gained a new skill. Chapter 15. Kalen's Duel. Floor 2 was not like the first floor at all. The first floor had actual rooms and a hallway leading to a large chamber room. Technically we could have skipped the rooms and headed straight for the boss room, but TelVurn advised that all the monsters in those rooms would have swarmed us from behind. We would never actually skip those rooms due to the chests inside, but it was worth considering the consequences when trying to figure out the rules of this place. The second floor was a maze. Harry tried to sound more sophisticated by saying It was a labyrinth, but I corrected him for a change and said this appears to have dead ends, which makes it a maze. The word maze is at the end of the definition. He shouted at me. Yes, now look up the differences between the two. I shouted back. Shut up both of you and let's get moving. VeLana shouted at the both of us. Anyway, as far as I knew about this world system and magic, it seemed to be created by intelligent beings but is likely governed by an AI, or perhaps more like a program than a true one AI like Harry. What we don't know is if the system created the Astro or was built around it. Regardless, magic may shape things, but I doubt it made them indestructible. Walked to the first T intersection and punched the wall. Left a decent size crater but didn't punch through. I infused Astra into my muscles, shifted to phase 2 of my transformation and hit it again. This time it left a complete hole through the wall and I could now see the other side. Jackson took a right turn, walked around the wall and came to the other side too. Look at me. Zeke, what are you doing? Okay, fair enough, some walls we don't need to plow through, but simply wandering around and hoping for the best seems like a waste of time. Let's just bust this joint and get this done. Okay, I can get behind that, he said as he pulled a new gun out of his inventory. This one was more of a rifle than a Gatling gun. He activated his blessings abilities to modify runes on the fly and did some quick tinkering. Okay, it's ready, let's do this. He pointed at the next wall and a beam of energy like a laser but thicker shot out and struck the wall. Took a moment but started to punch through, and then he started carving himself a hole. I guess we're doing this, VeLana said. Boys always making up their own rules. She waved a hand, and her conjured swords went to work on my hole to make it larger. Kaylin asked Emmy to help, and they got it done between the two of them. I let them do the path carving while I played bait to any traps or monsters, of which there were a few. Ow, that hurt, I said as I pulled a spike from my leg. I chucked it back at the monster that shot it at me and snagged it between the eyes. As it slumped over, I burst step past the body and cleaved another, rounding a corner in two. Down another path. Jackson was laughing as he fired off round after round at a horde of small creatures. There were many, but they were easy to kill. It took over an hour to make it across the floor, but at the end was another boss room. In front of us was a giant double metal door with the image of a book on one door and a sword on the other. Beneath each one was a dial mechanism with the arrow pointing up. There was a symbol in the up, right, left, and down positions as well. What do you think it means? Sarah asked. It means we're going to die, Toby said as he lowered his trunk to the floor. Toby, we're not going to die, Kaylin told him. We broke the rules of the Nexus by skipping all the work it put into it. For all I know, we'll probably just ignore the answer to the puzzle and just punch a hole to the next floor, which will surely cause our deaths. Wait, you know the answer? I asked. Of course, the 4 symbols mean knowledge, war, peace, and destruction, going clockwise. So we want knowledge for the book and war for the sword. That's what everyone would think, but no one would care for my answer. Why, what is your answer? The book and sword have no discernible features. The book doesn't have to represent knowledge and the sword doesn't have to represent war. But the book does face right and the sword faces left. It doesn't matter anyway. He trailed off as he watched me turn the dials to the positions he suggested. And then there was a click and the doors opened. See, buddy, I do care. VeLana patted him on the back. Good job, let's go beat this thing. He picked his trunk off the ground, stood a little taller, and walked all of 4 steps before hunching over again as he saw what was in the room. We filed in and saw a towering stone golem sitting in a throne chair, holding a book in one hand and a sword in the other. It looked like a Greece god made of stone and reminded me of the monster king in sheer size. Greetings, travelers, the stone person spoke. It can talk, is it a Magian? Jackson asked. No, I believe it is a construct or a golem, TelVurn replied. The construct continued to speak. I see you have the wisdom to enter here. But now it is strength you must possess. To continue, you must select one of you to be your champion and face a champion of my choosing. Everyone looked at me and I turned and looked at Kaylin. Okay kid, you're up. What, me? She asked. Yeah, you have a B rank spirit, do you not? Technically she is the strongest weapon we have. Zeke, you can't be serious. You're by far the strongest and most durable, Jackson said. True, I am awesome, but I think Kaylin can handle this and get some rewards too. Awesomely dumb, Harry muttered. Whoa, you're still here? He harumphed and turned around. Zeke, you really want me to go? I gave her a thumbs up and said you got this. She hesitantly stepped forward. Oh, before you go, will you use overcharge and full equip on her, and Jackson, can you use damage boost? I also put a hand on her and focused on using skill boost. Once she was all boosted and ready to go, she stepped forward and announced she would be the champion. Very well, champion. Here is your opponent, the Dark Spirit Knight of Real. Black bolt struck the ground, kicking up dust. As the dust settled, a tall knight in black armor with purplish-black energy surrounding it stood before Kalen. The Dark Spirit Knight had a sword and a shield in each hand. Raised the sword in a salute to the construct, and then it saluted Kalen. Begin, said the construct. The knight rushed forward nearly as fast as my burst step and swung its sword down upon Kalen, only to be intercepted by Emmy's swirling defense. The knight struck a series of lightning-quick blows and even tried to dash around and behind Kalen, yet swirling defense caught the blows every time. Then Emmy went on the attack, blasting 4 emerald beams of energy, blasting the knight backward. The knight managed to get its feet under him and stayed upright as it slid backward. With a quick response, he brought the shield up to intercept the beams until they subsided. The knight looked down at its armored chest and saw the damage that nearly broke through the armor. It leveled its blade to the side and performed an actual burst step this time. The knight's speed as it dashed around increased, and swirling defense could barely keep up. Instead of trying to keep up with the knight's speed, Kalen decided to continuously cast thorny roots in the same spot in front of her until one of them landed on the knight as he passed through the spell's effect. The roots shot up and wrapped around both legs, effectively halting his movement. When the knight tried to break through with movement, the thorns would tighten and pierce through the armor, causing black energy to leak. The knight tried to hack at them with his sword, but the time spent allowed Emmy to lock on the target and slice it away once again with beam attacks. The beams would strike and then slice across the shield back and forth until finally the shield was cut in half. Then it began to work on the chest armor. The knight dropped the ruined pieces of metal, held out a hand toward Kalen, and cast gravity well. A purple column of light surrounded Kalen and she fell to the ground, struggling against the increased gravity. The spirits were unaffected by the gravity, and Emmy increased her attacks, but the knight finally cut free and was moving again to avoid taking further damage. Orby, the river spirit, hadn't bothered with its water bullet attack due to the opponent's speed, but did take this opportunity to fly into Kalen and boost her Astra directly. Together, Kalen started cycling her internal Astra and the spirit's Astra to fortify her bones and muscles until she could at least rise to her knees. Thank you, Orby. Emmy, use your special ability. Emmy cast Absorb Attack, and the ongoing gravity well attack was sucked into Emmy like a black hole. With a sigh of relief, Kalen rose shakily to her feet. The knight moved toward her again to renew his attacks, and Kalen cast Binding Orbs. Binding Orbs. Cast 4 orbs at a location or to an enemy. The orbs, when touched by an enemy, will become bound to them. If they are destroyed by any means, they explode. For very high damage, orbs can be destroyed before being bound and will cause no damage. She put them around her body as the Dark Spirit Knight dashed around her, trying to break her defenses. It picked up 3 of the 4 orbs before really paying attention to them. He saw the 4th and cut it with his sword, destroying it. The knight then backed off for a moment, reached out with his free hand, caught one of the orbs floating around him and squeezed it. The resulting explosion took his arm off up to the shoulder, knocking him back several steps. Black energy poured like blood, and the spirit raged, then dashed forward to attack once again. This time, however, it was running in a straight line, and Emmy happily took aim and fired 3 beam attacks right at the orbs. The resulting explosion ended the fight and left a near-dead black spirit floating in its wisp form. Congratulations, champion. You have succeeded in this trial. You may claim this spirit and the chest of bounty. Your path to move on is now open. The construct said before it stood up from its throne, walked into the wall, and merged with it until it was gone. Cheers went up for Kalen and her spirits, and she took the time to tame the Dark Spirit Knight known as of Real. When she was done, I decided to use Appraiser's Oculus on her tamed spirit.